Imagine spending millions to create something revolutionary, only to watch it nearly bankrupt your entire company. This was Suzuki's most advanced engine ever, smooth, futuristic, and doomed from the start. In the mid-1970s, Suzuki went all in on a radical experiment, the Wankel rotary engine. No pistons, no valves, just a spinning triangle powering one of the strangest motorcycles ever built. The RE5 wasn't just odd, it was ingenious. Liquid-cooled, fuel-metered, with a ride so smooth it felt like gliding on silk. It looked like it came from tomorrow, but riders didn't get it, dealers couldn't sell it, and Suzuki lost millions. So why did this project flop so hard, and why do so many riders still talk about it today? Let's find out. Before we dive in, I need your help. If you're into forgotten tech, innovative engines, motorcycles that went too far, and machines that should have been legends, hit that subscribe button right now. It helps this channel grow, fuels future content, and makes sure these insane stories don't get lost again. All right, now back to the engine that almost destroyed Suzuki, the Rotary Dream. In the 1970s, a time brimming with faith in technological progress, the rotary engine, also known as the Wankel engine, emerged as a beacon of mechanical ingenuity. Unlike the conventional piston engine that relies on up and down motion, the Wankel utilized a completely different approach, spinning motion. At its core was a triangular rotor rotating inside an oblong chamber. As it turned, this design formed moving pockets of air and fuel that sequentially carried out the 4 combustion phases: intake, compression, ignition, and exhaust in one fluid, continuous process. This unconventional setup offered clear benefits over traditional engines. It was compact and lightweight, which made it ideal for small cars. Thanks to the lack of moving pistons, it delivered an incredibly smooth ride. And with its high revving nature, it promised spirited performance without losing refinement. These traits gave the Wankel engine serious potential when the automotive world faced tightening regulations and shifting market demands. Though German engineer Felix Wankel originated the design, it was Japan's Mazda that truly brought it to life. With vehicles like the Cosmo Sport and the RX series, Mazda showed the world how the rotary engine could excite engineers and drivers. Their success didn't go unnoticed, especially by Suzuki. Inspired by Mazda's achievements, Suzuki's top brass began to see the rotary as an engineering marvel and a gateway to distinction. For Suzuki, a company known more for nimble bikes and small cars than powerhouse machines, the Wankel engine offered a bold new path. It fit perfectly with Suzuki's desire to innovate and break out from the crowd. The appeal of a smooth, compact, and powerful engine was hard to resist, especially when it meant the chance to outshine a rival. That era promised a rotary revolution, with Japanese creativity at the helm. For Suzuki, embracing the Wankel wasn't just a technical decision, it was a statement of ambition, a declaration that they too could shape the future. And so began one of the brand's most fascinating adventures, a daring dive into the unique world of rotary performance. Before diving deeper, if you're enjoying this ride through forgotten engineering and ambitious designs, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got more stories like this, machines that changed everything, or almost did. Now let's see how Suzuki turned this wild idea into a real motorcycle. The heart of the RE5. Inspired by Mazda's success with the rotary engine, Suzuki made a bold strategic move. They licensed Wankel technology from NSU, the German originators of the design. It was an ambitious leap, aiming to bring rotary power to motorcycles, something no major manufacturer had accomplished before. But adapting a Wankel engine for motorcycle use brought serious engineering challenges. One of the trickiest was sealing. Rotary engines rely on apex seals, metal tips on the rotor that must maintain contact with the housing to preserve compression. These seals were notoriously delicate, especially under the high RPMs and heat generated in motorcycle use. Cooling posed another hurdle. Unlike typical air-cooled engines, the compact rotary design held heat tightly, demanding a robust water-based cooling system. Lubrication added yet another layer of complexity. The rotary engine required 2 separate oil systems, one to keep the rotor internals lubricated and another for the transmission and gearbox. Suzuki's answer came in the form of the RE5, a bike unlike any that had come before. At its heart was a 497 cubic centimeter single rotor engine, water-cooled and engineered with automotive-level sophistication. To manage heat, engineers installed a gear-driven mechanical fan, unusual for a motorcycle, but essential for the Wankel's thermal control. The fan worked alongside the water jacket to keep the engine stable in all conditions. The RE5 was filled with innovative features. A specially tuned Mikuni side draft carburetor handled fuel delivery, while rotary port induction gave it a unique throttle feel and power curve. Dual oil systems ensured both the internals and the drivetrain were always properly lubricated, even under stress. But one of Suzuki's most extraordinary steps wasn't on the road. It was behind the scenes. Recognizing the RE5's specialized requirements, Suzuki built an entirely new production line just for this model. This wasn't just an engine swap, it was a complete rethinking of motorcycle assembly. The precision needed to manufacture rotary components, especially the apex seals and eccentric shafts, demanded tools and workflows unlike anything Suzuki had used before. It was a massive investment that underscored just how committed they were to making the RE5 a success. Still, the technical demands created trade-offs. Though compact in size, the rotary engine with its auxiliary systems added significant weight. This posed design challenges for the frame and overall handling. Engineers had to carefully balance the bike, ensuring rideability wasn't sacrificed for innovation. Every duct, line, and bracket had to serve both function and form. Despite these complexities, the RE5 emerged as a technical marvel, a rotary-powered motorcycle that embodied Suzuki's most daring engineering spirit. Too smooth to love. Swinging a leg over the Suzuki RE5 in the 1970s was an experience unlike any other. It was a radically different sensation. Its rotary power plant didn't just change how the bike performed, it redefined how it felt to ride. The first surprise came with the throttle. Instead of a punchy, vibrating response, the RE5 delivered power in a silky, uninterrupted surge. There was no pulsing or engine thump, just a smooth, linear pull as the revs climbed effortlessly. But this refinement came with a trade-off. Unlike traditional engines, the RE5 offered virtually no engine braking. Rolling off the throttle didn't slow the bike as expected, it simply coasted, eerily quiet, until the brakes were applied. The sound was equally distinctive. Rather than the bark or rumble of a twin or inline-4, the RE5 emitted a soft, turbine-like hum. Riders likened it to a whirring or faint jet engine whine. Less aggressive, more mechanical. It was quiet, refined, and surprisingly devoid of the raw audio cues most bikers associated with power and performance. With almost no vibration and a soundtrack that whispered rather than roared, the RE5 felt strangely disconnected from the road. The bike had its quirks too. Cold starts could be rough, with sluggish throttle response and an uneven idle until the engine reached operating temperature. Heat management was another concern. While the RE5 featured both liquid cooling and a gear-driven fan, the system occasionally lagged, causing the engine to run hot in traffic or during extended idling, an unnerving trait given the rotary's heat sensitivity. Then, there was fuel efficiency. Despite its innovation, the RE5 was thirsty. Riders often stopped for fuel more frequently than expected, especially compared to more economical piston engine models. Compared to competitors like the Honda CB750 or Kawasaki Z1, the RE5 stood apart in performance and identity. Where those machines delivered visceral thrills and mechanical rawness, the RE5 offered smoothness and precision. It was a ride from a different world, fascinating to some, alienating to others. Ultimately, riding the RE5 was like piloting a prototype from tomorrow. It was advanced, enigmatic, and completely out of sync with the expectations of its time. Whether loved or misunderstood, the RE5 was unforgettable. Innovation without an audience. Despite its technical brilliance, the Suzuki RE5 never found its footing in the market. Beneath its futuristic engineering and rotary allure was a combination of missteps, misunderstandings, and market realities that conspired to seal its fate from the outset. At the dealership level, the RE5 proved a logistical headache. The rotary engine demanded a skill set far removed from conventional motorcycle maintenance. Most mechanics lacked the specialized training and tools needed to service it, and many weren't interested in learning. To them, the RE5 wasn't just complicated, it was unfamiliar territory. Routine service often turned into trial and error, frustrating customers and service staff alike. For many dealers, the RE5 was the bike they dreaded. Riders were equally ambivalent. While some admired its innovation, many found the riding experience too alien. The rotary's smooth, uninterrupted power lacked the punchy torque that cruisers and tourers delivered. Without engine braking and with an almost sterile smoothness, the RE5 felt more like a high-speed appliance than a living, breathing motorcycle. It was fast and refined, but emotionally flat to riders who craved feedback and character. Design choices didn't help its cause. The bike's instrument cluster, housed in a clamshell casing that looked like it belonged on a spaceship, baffled buyers. The turbine-inspired styling, while imaginative, missed the mark with mainstream touring riders of the era. It was a machine overflowing with technical ambition, but lacking the intuitive appeal that riders connected with. Regulatory pressures further complicated matters. Emission standards, especially in the US, were tightening. Rotary engines, with their high hydrocarbon output, faced an uphill battle. Despite their mechanical elegance, they struggled to meet evolving environmental demands, casting doubt on their long-term viability. In the broader market, Suzuki was stuck in limbo. Harley-Davidson embodied heritage and raw emotion. Honda had captured consumer trust with bulletproof reliability and accessible innovation. Suzuki, meanwhile, offered a bike that felt like a science experiment, remarkable in design but disconnected from what most riders wanted. Sales were dismal. Fewer than 6,000 RE5s left showrooms globally. After just 2 years, Suzuki pulled the plug. The financial losses were significant, and the company retreated from Rotary development with quiet disappointment. The RE5 was a bold swing at the future, but it missed the mark. Mechanics rejected it, riders couldn't relate to it, and in the end, its cutting-edge tech couldn't compensate for its lack of emotional connection. Too much innovation, not enough soul. That was the final verdict. Rotary versus reality. The Suzuki RE5 wasn't the only rotary-powered motorcycle ever dreamed up, but it was the only one to reach mass production. Even then, its time on the market was brief. The promise of a rotary revolution in motorcycling never truly took off. So what happened? At first glance, the Wankel rotary engine seemed ideal for bikes. Fewer moving parts, a high-revving nature, and a compact, lightweight form, all of it sounded perfect. But in practice, the rotary came with built-in complications. Chief among them was heat. Rotary engines generate intense heat in a very compact space. In cars, that can be managed with larger radiators and generous airflow. Motorcycles don't have that luxury, with limited room for cooling components and variable airflow, especially at low speeds. Keeping temperatures stable became a technical headache. For the RE5, this meant adding a water cooling system and a gear-driven fan, which introduced more weight and complexity, undercutting the Rotary's supposed simplicity. Then there were emissions. The Rotary's unique combustion chamber design led to incomplete burns, resulting in higher hydrocarbon emissions. Engineers tried various fixes, but the engine continually lagged behind tightening global standards. What started as a manageable issue grew into a regulatory dead end. Durability concerns also haunted the Rotary's reputation. While properly maintained engines could be reliable, the infamous apex seals, responsible for sealing the rotor's edges, became the stuff of legend. Whether the concern was fact or fiction didn't matter much. The perception of unreliability stuck. Riders and mechanics alike viewed the Rotary as high maintenance and hard to trust. The contrast with Mazda's Rotary journey is telling. The RX-7 and RX-8 achieved cult status for their lightweight and eager performance. But even Mazda couldn't escape the Rotary's Achilles heels: heat, emissions, and long-term reliability. While Rotary cars carved out a niche following, they never became mainstream, and eventually, emissions laws forced Mazda to shelve the design. In motorcycling, the Rotary was an even tougher sell. Riders value not just performance, but feedback and mechanical connection. The Rotary was quiet, smooth, and strangely emotionless. It lacked the thrum, the grunt, and the rawness that makes a bike feel alive. And unlike in a car where the engine is hidden beneath metal and muffled by cabin walls, motorcycles put the motor's soul on full display. The Rotary just didn't sing the same song. The Rotary engine didn't fail because it lacked innovation. It failed because it didn't match the emotional, practical, and regulatory demands of the world it entered. It was brilliant, but in the wrong place, at the wrong time. The project that nearly killed Suzuki. The Suzuki RE5 wasn't just a sales flop, it was a financial disaster so severe it nearly sank Suzuki's motorcycle division. It started with a massive bet. Suzuki paid millions to license Rotary technology from NSU, hoping to pioneer a new era of motorcycle performance. But what followed was one of the most expensive R&D projects in Suzuki's history. The company built a dedicated production line, hired specialized engineers, and developed entirely new tooling. Everything about the RE5 engine, frame, cooling system, even the eccentric instrument cluster was designed from scratch. This wasn't a tweak to an existing platform, it was a moonshot. By the time the RE5 entered production, Suzuki had reportedly invested the equivalent of over $15 million in 1970s currency, a staggering amount for a motorcycle project. With projected sales in the tens of thousands, they expected to recoup that quickly. But reality hit hard. Fewer than 6,000 RE5s were ever sold worldwide. Dealerships were stuck with unsellable inventory. Mechanics didn't want to service the unfamiliar Rotary engine. Riders were put off by the bike's quirks, price, and the lack of emotional connection. Marketing failed to explain why the RE5 mattered. Instead of being seen as a futuristic breakthrough, it was labeled an expensive, impractical oddity. The financial losses were enormous. Estimates suggest Suzuki lost tens of millions of dollars, accounting for not just the initial investment, but also unsold units, scrapped parts, and abandoned tooling. Internally, the RE5 became a cautionary tale. Company leadership was so embarrassed by the failure that they reportedly issued a quiet directive: forget it ever happened. That directive extended far. The RE5 is conspicuously absent from Suzuki's official motorcycle museum in Japan. despite being one of the company's most ambitious engineering feats. Rumors circulated for decades that Suzuki went so far as to dump entire inventories of RE5 spare parts into the ocean in an effort to erase the project from memory. Whether true or not, the story became legend, illustrating just how deeply the failure had cut. To survive, Suzuki had to slash R&D, scrap other experimental projects, and double down on more conventional machines. It was the success of the GS750 and the GT series that eventually pulled the company out of crisis, restoring its reputation and financial health. But the scars remained. For years, Suzuki refused to speak publicly about the RE5. Rotary development was dead. Caution replaced risk, and the company never again ventured so far from the mechanical mainstream. Today, the RE5 stands as both a mechanical marvel and a sobering lesson. It dared to push boundaries, but was out of sync with the market, the mechanics, and the moment. A bold vision that ended in silence, sunk not by failure of engineering, but by the brutal economics of unmet expectations. Legacy and lessons. Though the Suzuki RE5 failed commercially in its day, its legacy has grown stronger with time. No longer a punchline, it now stands as a symbol of fearless engineering and the courage to take risks in a conservative industry. The RE5 delivered an enduring lesson to the motorcycle world. Innovation alone doesn't guarantee success. Breaking the mold is admirable, but without rider trust, dealer backing, and cultural readiness, even the most advanced machines can miss the mark. The Rotary engine was smooth, futuristic, and packed with tech, but it entered a world that wasn't ready to embrace its silence, its quirks, or its price tag. It lacked the visceral soul that riders instinctively seek. And yet, decades later, the RE5 enjoys something it never had when new: admiration. Among collectors, restorers, and vintage enthusiasts, it's now celebrated for the very qualities that once doomed it. Its uniqueness, its uncompromising design, its oddball charm. The Rotary's quiet surge of power, the spacecraft-inspired styling, the clamshell gauges, all have become marks of a cult classic. Owning an RE5 today isn't just about riding. It's about owning a piece of motorcycle history's great what if. In online forums and garage workshops, RE5 fans keep the legacy alive, swapping tips, hunting down parts, and sharing the joy of owning something truly rare. What once languished in showrooms now turns heads at vintage rallies and bike shows. Could Rotary motorcycles return? With modern advances, fuel injection, lightweight materials, precision cooling systems, and hybrid tech, it's technically possible. The issues that once plagued the RE5 could be solved with today's engineering. Better apex seals, smarter temperature control, and computer-managed fueling could make a Rotary viable again, especially in a world already rethinking what performance and sound should mean. But the biggest hurdle remains unchanged: rider psychology. Motorcycling is as much about emotion as it is about efficiency. Riders crave connection, sound, feedback, and personality. Without that, the Rotary still risks feeling too clinical, too different, too disconnected. In the end, the RE5's true legacy lies not in its failure, but in its boldness. It dared to be different when everyone else played it safe. It reminds us that progress doesn't always win immediately, but it can inspire long after the engine goes quiet. For Suzuki, the RE5 was a costly misstep. For the rest of us, it's a powerful reminder of what happens when you try to rewrite the rules, and how sometimes just trying is enough to earn a place in history. Suzuki dared to dream big and fell hard, but left behind a legacy that still fascinates today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of motorcycling's most ambitious misfires, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more stories from the edge of innovation, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Would you ride a modern Rotary bike? Until next time, keep your throttle open and your mind even wider. See you on the next ride.